Ladies and gentlemen, there comes a moment in every life when the noise of other people's opinions becomes so loud that you can barely hear your own soul speaking. There comes a moment when you realize that the people you tried so hard to impress, the people you tried so hard to keep, the people you tried so hard to prove yourself to, were never actually holding the key to your worth. And when that moment arrives, it does not arrive with fireworks. It arrives quietly. It arrives like dawn. It arrives like truth. It arrives like a voice inside you saying, they never found what they lost in you. Think about those words. They never found what they lost in you. Not because you were lacking. Not because you were too small. Not because you were not enough. But because some people are so busy looking for comfort that they do not know how to recognize value. Some people are so distracted by their own wounds that they cannot appreciate a soul standing right in front of them. Some people are so committed to their own confusion that even if you gave them your best, they would not know what to do with it. And here is the hard truth, the truth that can set you free if you are brave enough to receive it. You can be exceptional and still be misunderstood. You can be loving and still be abandoned. You can be loyal and still be overlooked. You can be genuine and still be replaced by those who never knew how rare you were. Now hear me clearly. The pain was real. The disappointment was real. The betrayal, the silence, the neglect, the late realization, the empty apology, the people who came back only after they discovered the world was not as kind as they imagined. All of that was real. I am not standing here to tell you to pretend it did not hurt. Real strength is not the denial of pain. Real strength is the decision that pain will not be your prison. Real strength is saying, yes, it broke me for a season, but it will not define me for a lifetime. Real strength is not the absence of tears. Real strength is tears that do not drown your destiny. Have you ever noticed how people value things properly only after they are gone? They ignore the roof until it rains. They ignore the road until the tire blows. They ignore the heart until it stops giving. And too many times, they ignore the person who was steady, loyal, honest, and real until that person is no longer available. Then suddenly, they become poets. Suddenly, they remember. Suddenly, they understand. Suddenly, your absence speaks louder than your presence ever did. But listen to me. The moment they realize your worth is not the moment your worth was created. Your worth was always there. Their recognition did not add to it. Their confusion did not subtract from it. Their inability to see you was never the measure of your value. There is a special kind of suffering that comes from trying to be understood by people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You explain yourself. They twist your words. You give them time. They waste it. You give them loyalty. They treat it like a convenience. You give them love. They take it for granted. And when you finally pull back, when you finally stand up, when you finally choose your peace over their chaos, they look shocked, as if they did not participate in the very story that led to your departure. But the wise person learns this lesson. You do not keep setting yourself on fire to warm people who are comfortable with your suffering. I want you to understand something about self-respect. Self-respect is not arrogance. Self-respect is not pretending you are superior to everyone around you. Self-respect is the quiet decision that your dignity matters. It is the inner law that says, I will not keep negotiating my value with people who refuse to honor it. Self-respect is the moment you stop lowering your standards to keep a seat at a table that has already starved your spirit. Self-respect is when you stop saying, please choose me, and begin saying, I choose what chooses me well. Self-respect is when you realize that being alone is not the same as being abandoned, and being unseen by others does not mean you are invisible to life. You know, life has a way of teaching us through contrast. You only learn what peace feels like after enough chaos. You only learn what loyalty means after enough betrayal. You only learn what genuine love is after enough conditional attention. And sometimes the people who walked away from you did you a strange kind of favor. They removed themselves from the next chapter of your life. And though it hurt, though it cut deep, though it made you, quote, question your own worth at the time, it also gave you a gift, clarity. Because once they were gone, you could finally see what had been hidden by hope. You could finally see what had been disguised by history. You could finally see that not every connection deserves continuation, and not every memory deserves a future. The human heart is a powerful thing. It can love long after logic says to leave. It can hope long after evidence says to let go. It can wait far beyond what is healthy. That is why emotional independence is not coldness. Emotional independence is maturity. Emotional independence is not shutting your heart down. It is learning how to keep your heart open without keeping your life hostage to the moods, choices, or approval of others. Emotional independence says, you may be part of my story, but you are not the author of my worth. Emotional independence says, I can care deeply without collapsing when you disappoint me. Emotional independence says, I can love you and still leave you to face the consequences of your own neglect. And make no mistake, the world will test this. The world will tempt you to confuse attention with love. The world will tempt you to confuse validation with value. The world will tempt you to confuse being needed with being cherished. But attention is easy. Validation is temporary. Being needed can be selfish. Being cherished is rare. And if you spend your life chasing the applause of people who would not stand with you in silence, you will become a stranger to your own soul. You will become dependent on the faces of others to tell you who you are. That is a dangerous way to live, because what happens when they are not clapping? What happens when they are not texting? What happens when they are not watching? What happens when the room is quiet and your own thoughts are the only company you have? If your peace depends on being chosen, then your peace will always be fragile. But if your peace depends on who you are becoming, then your peace can survive any storm. Discipline is one of the great rescues of life. Discipline is what saves you when emotions want to pull you backward. Discipline is what saves you when memories start bargaining with your future. Discipline is what saves you when your mind says, go back, call them, check again, explain again, beg again, lower yourself again. Discipline steps in and says, no, we do not return to what kept us small. Discipline is not punishment. Discipline is protection. It is the bodyguard of destiny. It stands at the door of your life and refuses entry to every habit, every attachment, every indulgence that weakens your spirit. You may feel weak today, but weakness is not your identity. You may feel exhausted today, but exhaustion is not your destiny. You may feel like you have been left behind, but being left behind is often how you are redirected toward something better than what you were chasing. A disciplined life does not wait for feelings to cooperate. It builds anyway. It rises anyway. It works anyway. It heals anyway. It grows anyway. That is why some people recover faster than others. Not because the pain hit them less, but because they refused to make pain their headquarters. They let pain visit, but they did not let pain move in. Let me tell you a story that lives in many forms in many lives. A young person pours everything into a relationship, a friendship, a family bond, a workplace, a community, a dream. They are always there. They show up early. They stay late. They give grace when others are cruel. They forgive what should have ended. They keep the door open when it should have been locked. And still, they are treated as replaceable. Still, they are not fully valued. Still, they are remembered only when their absence creates an inconvenience. At first, they think the problem is their own lack. They ask, what did I do wrong? Why was I not enough? Why did they not see me? But one day, after enough disappointment, they begin to ask a stronger question. Why was I trying to earn from people what should have been given freely? That is the question that changes everything. Because the moment you stop asking how to become more acceptable to people who are committed to misunderstanding your value, you begin to become more faithful to your own life. There is a difference between being humble and being diminished. Humility says, I know I am not above others. Diminishment says, I am less than I am. Humility is noble. Diminishment is a lie. Do not confuse the two. You can be kind without being a doormat. You can be gentle without being easy to misuse. You can be forgiving without being available for repeated disrespect. You can be open-hearted without leaving yourself defenseless. Some people think strength always looks loud. It does not. Sometimes strength looks like silence. Sometimes strength looks like walking away before the second insult. Sometimes strength looks like not replying. Sometimes strength looks like not explaining. Sometimes strength looks like going home, closing the door, and beginning again in private. And let me tell you, beginning again is not failure. Beginning again is one of the most honorable acts a human being can perform, because to begin again, you must admit the truth. You must admit that something ended. You must admit that something hurt. You must admit that what you hoped for did not arrive in the form you expected. And then, with all that honesty, you still choose life. You still choose growth. You still choose purpose. You still choose to wake up, to wash your face, to stand tall, to take the next step. That is why the future belongs not to those who never fell, but to those who learned how to rise with wisdom. Some of you have been living for a long time under the wrong spotlight. You have been measuring your days by whether someone noticed you, whether someone called you, whether someone approved of you, whether someone remembered you. But I came to tell you that the most important audience in your life is not out there. It is in here. It is the part of you that knows the truth when the room is lying. It is the part of you that knows when you are being used. It is the part of you that knows when your energy is being drained. It is the part of you that knows when a relationship has become a habit instead of a blessing. That inner witness is precious. Do not silence it just because you fear being alone with the truth. The need for validation can become a quiet addiction. It does not always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like checking your phone too often. Sometimes it looks like over-explaining. Sometimes it looks like constantly posting, constantly comparing, constantly hoping that a comment, a like, a compliment, a message, a reaction will finally settle the ache inside. But validation is like sugar. It gives a quick rush and then leaves you emptier than before. It cannot feed the soul. It cannot heal the wound of neglect. It cannot rebuild identity. Only truth can do that. Only purpose can do that. Only discipline can do that. Only the decision to know yourself can do that. And once you know yourself, you become harder to manipulate. Once you know yourself, you become harder to shame. Once you know yourself, you become harder to control through guilt, silence, or comparison. Once you know yourself, you begin to understand that not every opinion deserves access to your mind. You begin to understand that not every invitation deserves your presence. You begin to understand that not every relationship is meant to be repaired, and not every goodbye is a tragedy. Some goodbyes are the beginning of sanity. Some endings are mercy in disguise. There is a moment in the life of every growing person where they stop asking, how do I get them back? and begin asking, how do I get myself back? That is a sacred shift. That is where healing begins. That is where identity comes home. Because the truth is, when you chase people who are already gone, you lose pieces of yourself on the road. You become a detective of their emotions, a servant of their moods, a prisoner of their uncertainty. But when you return to yourself, when you reclaim your time, your energy, your standards, your focus, your discipline, your peace, then you begin to live again, not survive. Live. Life will try to convince you that being chosen by the wrong people is better than being alone. It is not. Life will try to convince you that keeping the peace is more important than keeping your dignity. It is not. Life will try to convince you that your value depends on being useful, convenient, agreeable, or attractive enough to be kept. It does not. Your worth is not a performance. Your worth is not a negotiation. Your worth is not a prize awarded by people with incomplete vision. Your worth is inherent. It is built in. It existed before their opinion. It exists after their departure. It exists whether they applaud or not. And here is a sentence worth carrying in your chest. What is meant for you does not require you to abandon yourself to hold it. Read that again in your spirit. What is meant for you does not require you to abandon yourself to hold it. If you have to become smaller to keep it, it is too expensive. If you have to ignore your conscience to maintain it, it is too costly. If you have to keep bleeding just to call it love, then it is not love in the form your soul needs. The right opportunities do not demand self-betrayal. The right relationships do not require self-erasure. The right future does not ask you to become a shadow. But the path to that future is not always glamorous. It often begins with ordinary decisions. Wake up when you said you would wake up. Keep your promises to yourself. Eat better. Sleep better. Train your mind. Read more. Speak less when words are cheap. Move with intention. Finish what you start. Stop romanticizing chaos. Stop giving your attention to everything that distracts you from your calling. Purpose loves order. Purpose loves consistency. Purpose loves the person who keeps showing up, even when the feelings are not present. Purpose rewards the one who treats their life as something sacred. There is greatness in a person who learns to sit with themselves and not panic. There is greatness in a person who can walk through a quiet room and not feel abandoned by life. There is greatness in a person who can lose a chapter without losing their dignity. There is greatness in a person who can say, that hurt me, but I will not turn it into poison. That is emotional mastery. That is maturity. That is power of the highest kind. Not the power of control, but the power of self-command. Some of you need to stop asking why they did not choose you and start asking what that rejection was protecting you from. Maybe their absence spared you a lifetime of insecurity. Maybe their inconsistencies spared you a lifetime of emotional drought. Maybe their inability to stay revealed a character you were not yet willing to see. Maybe the loss was painful because your heart was sincere, but sincerity alone is not enough to sustain a connection. You also need respect. You also need trust. You also need emotional safety. You also need reciprocity. You also need truth. A relationship without those things is not a home. It is a waiting room. And waiting rooms are dangerous when you begin to live there, because life is happening elsewhere while you sit staring at a door that may never open. Do not build your identity in the hallway of another person's indecision. Do not keep your dreams paused because someone else is unsure. Do not put your healing on hold because someone might return. The future belongs to those who refuse to be frozen by the past. The future belongs to those who can grieve and grow at the same time. The future belongs to those who can say goodbye without turning their whole life into a memorial. One of the most liberating moments in a human life is when you no longer need the permission of the people who failed to see you. That moment is freedom. That moment is oxygen. That moment is the beginning of a new self. Suddenly, you no longer need to explain your boundaries. Suddenly, you no longer need to chase closure from those who created confusion. Suddenly, you no longer need to perform for those who only valued your performance. Suddenly, you understand that peace is not found in winning someone's approval. Peace is found in becoming whole enough that approval is no longer the center of the room. There is an old truth in every culture, in every village, in every city, in every generation. A tree does not question its worth because some leaves fell off. A river does not question its purpose because someone could not cross it. A mountain does not become small because a traveler was tired of climbing. And you, my friend, are not reduced by the people who failed to hold on to you. You are not made lesser by those who could not recognize the treasure in their hands. You are not less valuable because someone else was careless with what was precious. The diamond does not lose its shine because someone left it in the dust. It remains a diamond, and so do you. But being a diamond in the dust requires a decision. It requires you to stop allowing the dust to define the stone. It requires you to wash off the lies. It requires you to polish yourself through discipline, through learning, through introspection, through courageous self-honesty. It requires you to ask, what in me still needs healing? What in me still fears being alone? What in me still confuses being wanted with being loved? These are not weak questions. These are warrior questions. The strongest people are not the ones who never ask them. The strongest people are the ones who ask them and refuse to lie in the answer. There is no shame in the season when you discover you have been giving too much to people who gave too little back. There is only wisdom in learning it soon enough to change. There is no shame in the season when you realize you were trying to extract intimacy from people who only offered familiarity. There is only wisdom in stepping away. There is no shame in admitting you wanted to be enough for someone who was never willing to be enough for you. There is only wisdom in coming home to yourself. Because the moment you admit the truth, you regain your power. And power, real power, never needs to be announced. It is felt. And let me say this with the urgency of a truth that could save someone's life. Do not confuse a familiar wound with a sacred bond. Some people feel important because they have been present through your pain, but presence alone does not make someone worthy. Some people know your history, but not your heart. Some people know how to trigger you, but not how to heal you. Some people know how to return, but not how to remain. Some people know how to apologize, but not how to change. Do not build your life on repeat offenses dressed as relationships. Choose what heals you, even if it takes longer. Choose what steadies you, even if it feels quieter. Choose what builds you, even if it is less exciting than chaos. Choose the long road of becoming over the short road of impressing. Choose mastery over mood. Choose character over image. Choose peace over drama. Choose clarity over confusion. Choose purpose over popularity. Choose substance over spectacle. That is how a life becomes unshakable. I know some of you are tired of being strong, tired of being the reliable one, tired of carrying the emotional load, tired of understanding everyone else while nobody seems to understand you, tired of smiling when your heart is heavy, tired of pretending you are fine when you are not. And I want to tell you something beautiful. You do not have to wear exhaustion like a crown. You do not have to keep performing resilience when what you need is restoration. Rest is not retreat. Rest is strategy. Rest is not laziness. Rest is wisdom. Rest is where your nervous system remembers it does not have to live in survival forever. But rest is not the end of the journey. It is the beginning of renewal. When you are renewed, you think differently. You speak differently. You choose differently. You stop reacting out of fear and start responding out of conviction. You stop moving from scarcity and start moving from abundance. You stop looking at life like it is something being withheld from you and start seeing that life is something you are being prepared for. That shift changes everything. It changes how you walk. It changes how you love. It changes what you tolerate. It changes what you demand from yourself. It changes the kind of room you are willing to live in emotionally. There is a version of you that is not begging anymore. There is a version of you that is not apologizing for existing. There is a version of you that is not checking whether they miss you. There is a version of you that is not chasing closure. There is a version of you that is building. There is a version of you that wakes up with purpose, speaks with clarity, moves with discipline, and carries dignity like it was born in the bones. That version of you is not a fantasy. That version is waiting beneath the grief, beneath the fear, beneath the old stories, beneath the habits that kept you small. And every time you choose yourself, you bring that version closer to life. Do not underestimate the power of one decision. One decision to stop texting. One decision to stop checking. One decision to stop begging. One decision to stop explaining yourself to the wrong crowd. One decision to go to bed on time. One decision to read the book. One decision to go to the gym. One decision to start the project. One decision to protect your peace. One decision can alter the architecture of your future. Great lives are not built by grand speeches alone. They are built by repeated decisions that honor a deeper self. And in the quiet hours, when nobody is watching, when the world is not clapping, when your old memories are trying to speak louder than your new truth, say this to yourself: I am not what they failed to appreciate. I am not what they left behind. I am not the version of me that was begging to be seen. I am the one who survived. I am the one who learned. I am the one who rose. I am the one who now knows the difference between being wanted and being valued. Say it until it becomes the sound of your inner home, because there will be more tests. There will be more moments when life asks whether you still need the approval of those who never truly saw you. There will be more opportunities to return to old patterns, old people, old ways of thinking. But the new you does not live there anymore. The new you has standards. The new you has rhythm. The new you has self-respect. The new you understands that pain can be a teacher, but it does not get to be the governor. The new you understands that some doors close not because life is against you, but because your future is protecting itself. So let them wonder. Let them remember late. Let them realize too slowly. Let them feel the silence you used to fill. Let them confront the space where your loyalty once lived. That is not your burden to carry. Your burden is not to manage their regret. Your responsibility is to manage your becoming. And becoming requires courage. Becoming requires patience. Becoming requires mornings when you do not feel like it. Becoming requires nights when you refuse to quit. Becoming requires saying no to what weakens you and yes to what strengthens you. The world does not need another person who has learned to perform confidence while bleeding privately. The world needs people who have done the inner work. People who are not afraid of solitude because they have made peace with themselves. People who are not addicted to applause because they have discovered conviction. People who are not controlled by rejection because they understand direction. People who can love without losing themselves. People who can leave without becoming bitter. People who can be hurt without becoming hardened. People who can remember the pain and still choose purpose That is who you are becoming. Not because everything was easy. Not because everyone stayed. Not because you were always understood. But because you decided that your life would not end where someone else's carelessness began. You decided that your spirit would not live forever in the shadow of another person's inability. You decided that your confidence would not be built on borrowed opinion. You decided that your discipline would be stronger than your longing. You decided that your purpose would be louder than your pain. And now, before I close, I want to speak to the part of you that still aches. I want to speak to the part of you that still thinks, maybe if I had been better, they would have stayed. No. Hear me. No. You do not need to become more lovable to earn what is meant for your heart. You do not need to become less honest to keep people comfortable. You do not need to become smaller to fit into rooms that were never built for your growth. You do not need to keep carrying the weight of somebody else's failure to recognize you. The loss was theirs. The lesson is yours. The future is yours. So stand up inside your own life. Stand up in your mind. Stand up in your habits. Stand up in your choices. Stand up in your values. Stand up in your boundaries. Stand up in your discipline. Stand up in your purpose. Stand up in your confidence. Stand up in your self-respect. And when the old voices come whispering that you were not enough, answer them with the calm authority of someone who has survived the storm. I was never the problem. I was the lesson you were too blind to keep. They never found what they lost in you because what they lost was not ordinary. It was loyalty. It was depth. It was patience. It was grace. It was a presence that was honest, steady, and rare. But while they were searching for what they had already mishandled, you were being called into something greater than being someone's convenient comfort. You were being summoned into your own life, into your own strength, into your own peace, into your own purpose. So go now with your head high and your heart clear. Go now and build what they could not see. Go now and become what pain tried to prevent. Go now and love yourself with the same devotion you once offered to those who did not know how to receive it. Go now and stop asking for permission to be whole. Go now and make your life so rooted, so disciplined, so peaceful, so purposeful that the absence of those who left becomes a footnote, not a chapter. And when the night gets quiet and the old ache returns, remember this. They never found what they lost in you, but you can find what was waiting in you all along. Rise, rebuild, refuse the old story, reclaim your dignity, reclaim your focus, reclaim your spirit, reclaim your future. This is your moment. This is your turning point. This is your life. Do not merely survive it. Own it. Live it. Honor it. And walk forward like someone who finally knows their worth.